Hello and welcome to Living Stones, a podcast of conversations with the people of Red Mountain Community Church, highlighting the victories and struggles, the snapshots and stories of the people sitting right next to you on Sunday morning. I'm Peter Franson from Spirit Blade Productions and your fellow seat warmer at Red Mountain Community Church. My co-host today is Bob Fox, who unfortunately was recently demoted from lead pastor to associate pastor, but we're about grace here at this church, so we're not going to dig into all the reasons why that happened. No, actually, for those that maybe are new to the church, Bob was our founding pastor and the lead pastor of the church for many years, and then helped transition Kyle into the role of lead pastor while he remains on staff doing different things now. What is your day-to-day type of work on staff these days, Bob?
It's whatever Kyle wants me to do. That's the bottom line.
That's an awkward position. I mean, him being your son.
Yeah, really. It's a reversal of roles, but I'm ready for that. And I want to support him and the elders and Preston and wherever I'm needed in terms of the staff functioning. So for the last 5 months, I've been working a lot manual labor just on the remodel.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not. Yeah, just helping coordinate volunteers for that.
Okay.
And actually do work. So it really varies, and that's what I like about it. There's a lot of variety to what I do.
Yeah.
Everything from manual labor to teaching and counseling.
So what's this is a question I've started asking a number of, I think I've asked all the pastors this question, but I actually want you to answer it twice. The question is, what's the most fun or natural part of your job, and also the hardest or most challenging part? So maybe one that kind of speaks to your strength and your wiring, another that is just difficult or maybe doesn't speak as much, isn't part of your strengths as much. And the reason I want you to answer this question twice is because I'd really like to hear your thoughts about these questions from when you were our lead pastor and all the years you spent in that role first. And then I want to hear about currently, if that's changed. So let's start with kind of what you would describe looking back as the most fun or natural part of your job, and the most challenging part as well when you were lead pastor.
Probably the hard things where the church needs you to handle a situation that is really difficult. It might be anything from a situation with an employee to a doctrinal belief, but you have to step in and handle it and be the mouthpiece for the leadership in that. That's the hardest, but also the most fulfilling.
Oh, really?
I'm surprised when I got out of the lead role entirely. I'm surprised that I didn't miss preaching. Mm-hmm. I thought I would. I did miss those hard things that actually kept me awake at night.
Wow.
Because I don't know why that is. I haven't figured that out. But the hard things are what I miss the most. And the things that I thought I would miss, I'm good.
What did you...
Kind of bizarre.
So now transitioning, that's really interesting that both of those would be found. You're the most fun and enjoyable and the most challenging, difficult would be found in the same thing. Really interesting. Is that true in your new role, or how would you describe what's most fun and playing to your strengths and what's most challenging or difficult now?
I would say probably, and this has to do with who you become as you age. I've lost a lot of my ability to hear.
Okay.
And so counseling would be hard for me now.
Okay.
And there's parts of that I miss. Even group prayer is difficult for me because I can't hear what's being prayed, and you don't want to jump in and say something that's dumb. So for the most part, some of those things that gave me great joy are now, I have to be careful about entering into those because I can create a problem. So that's a fascinating part, and you don't anticipate those things. You don't really anticipate the day when you'll have to be careful about opening your mouth because you may have heard the whole thing wrong.
Oh man, yeah.
So there are those things. I would say the part that gives me joy more and more is just serving. Just if I can do the job nobody wants to do, if I can make some problem go away, that's what I really do enjoy now. So I'm typically raising my hand, volunteering for the job nobody wants to do.
Well, I'm sure that's really appreciated.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I really appreciate just the way that you invested in me in various times in my life. I think of when I was in high school and we were still meeting in an Italian restaurant, and you didn't have an office, I don't think, at the restaurant. And
No.
so when I had my weird questions about the Bible and the Witch of Endor and stuff, I would call you up at home, and you so graciously gave me time, and I really appreciate that. And then later when I was on staff, I can't imagine a better person to have worked for, and those times we would spend meeting each week to prepare for the contents of the upcoming service, were both fulfilling to me from a ministry standpoint, and also just encouraging to me and building into me in so many ways. I miss those. I still miss those weekly meetings. That was a really, really precious time. So thank you so much for your investment.
Well, you were a joy. You were a joy, Peter, as you grew up, and your mind is a little warped. But no,
question.
you were
No
you were
question.
a delight, an exception in a lot of ways. I do think that the Lord gives grace. That's what I would testify to. Some of this, what makes you happy now, what gives you joy, is really His grace that meets you wherever you're at and whoever you become. So,
Yeah. I'm curious. I've asked this to a few pastors now. I hasn't gotten around to all of them, but I think I want to try if I can. So my question for you: if you could have another skill set or talent that you don't currently have, and had to choose another career that you'd be successful enough to support yourself in, what would you choose?
well, that is a hard question. I mean, I was fortunate in that I have other skill sets, and I was able to farm and ranch successfully, and that's the only other occupation I would have any interest in, and I've done it.
But it's not about what you would be interested in. It's you have to choose.
I have to choose.
You get the gift of a skill set you don't currently have, and you have to choose.
See, I didn't hear.
So this is not
I didn't hear. You're not speaking clearly.
Yeah. This is not necessarily a fantasy, type thing.
I think I would probably want to invest in some way in the agriculture of an underdeveloped country.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think that creates avenues for the gospel.
Yeah.
And it creates, in fact, tremendous avenues. So I think that's one thing I'd be really interested in. If I could do that.
Cool.
And especially if there was strong funding, it could actually make quite a difference.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when you travel to other parts of the world, they're working hard, a lot of the men in agriculture, but they just don't have the understanding they need and the capital they need
Yeah.
to make their land productive and to make hunger go away.
Yeah. Speaking of agriculture, a lot of people put trees in their homes during Christmas, and they put lights on those trees. And we do some things with lights here at this church. And as a matter of fact, did you all like that transition? I'm feeling pretty good about that. Okay. Earlier today, Bob and I spent some time talking with Jeff Pitzer, who became connected at Red Mountain in an interesting way that was actually an answer to prayer from our founding pastor, Bob Fox. Here's that conversation now. Jeff Pitzer.
Yes, sir.
Am I saying that right, Pitzer?
Yes, you are.
All right. I asked Bob, but you never know when he's lying to you, so I thought I should
Well,
double check
truth
with
be
you.
told, I heard the previous podcast, and it was Jeff and I think it was either Jessica or Ariane going, Pitzer.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
So he butchered it the first time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm really good at that. You can always count on me to butcher people's names. Well, thank you for doing this. I know almost nothing about this story, but I know enough that I'm really curious about it. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing from both you and Bob about this. First, how long have you been attending Red Mountain?
Since 2011.
Okay. All right. And you, was that around the time that you'd moved here, then shortly after you moved here, or no?
No, we moved here in 2005.
Oh, okay. All right. Where did you move here from?
Florida.
Oh, okay.
One of the many stops.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead, Bob. My father's retired military.
Okay.
And so I moved, I want to say 16 times before I was 17 years old.
Wow.
I went to 3 different high schools, one in Louisiana, hence the accent.
Okay.
One outside of Washington, D.C., and finished up in Florida.
Okay. All right. And how would you describe, like, before coming to Red Mountain, just generally your involvement with church or churches and your thoughts about God? You know, where were you at before coming to Red Mountain?
Very little,
Okay.
truth be told. Not, and Bob said this the best. It's not an excuse that I moved around. It's kind of hard to plant roots when you're there 8-10 months.
Yeah.
I remember unpacking at times, and my mom said, "Don't unpack that box. We're not going to be here that long."
Oh, wow.
You know, so it's hard to establish some roots. Having said that, it's not an excuse. I think it's more of an explanation as to why we really didn't get involved in church. I did ask my dad. This was right after my son was born in 2008, and I said, "If you could, I'm the youngest of 3 boys. I said,
Okay.
if you can do anything, if you can change anything, what would you change?" He said, I wish you'd have known the Lord. Having said that, now his father passed away when he was a teenager, so he was angry.
Oh, okay.
He was angry, and he was very involved in church. You know, he sang in the church choir, and my grandmother and my aunt and everything. But he was that teenage, probably rebellious a little bit, and angry at the Lord.
Okay.
And he said that's not an excuse, but I really wish you would learn, to follow the Lord. So I kept that in the back of my mind, when Chase was born. So very little involvement with the churches prior to Red Mountain.
Okay. So then, before coming to Red Mountain, correct me if I got this wrong, but before coming to Red Mountain, you met someone at Home Depot who did attend the church. What can you tell me about just your interaction, your time with them?
I did. It was an interesting story. We had an issue with the drip system. Now in Florida, of course, we have rain. Yeah, and not drip system.
Yeah,
so there
yeah.
was an issue with the drip system, and I went to Home Depot, and I had a perplexed look on my face, probably pitiful look on my face when I was looking at all of these little drip system gadgets. And he approached me, this gentleman by the name of Jeff at the time, and and we just struck up a conversation. I said, I'm relatively new here from Florida, and my drip system is not dripping.
Okay. So his name was Jeff too.
His name was Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, his name was Jeff, and he was just humble. He was humble. He was real, and we just struck up a conversation. He said, "Hey, give it a shot. If you can't fix your drip system, here's my business card. Go ahead and give me a call." Well, obviously one of the reasons why I'm here is I obviously did not fix my drip system, and called him a couple weeks later. And he came out, and I'm one of those inquisitive. I don't want to pay someone just to do the work. I'm going to also help out when and if I can and learn. And he was there for a few hours working on the drip system. And again, just a humble, real, genuine guy. And just got to know a little bit about him. And near the end, he asked me, he says, do you go to church? And I said, no. I said, I believe in Jesus, but I don't go to church. It's just my wife and I. This was right around 2006.
Okay.
I said, I certainly believe in Jesus, but I don't follow him. And I told him the story about, being a military brat, moving around often. And he says, well, I tell you what, if you're ever interested, have an amazing church just right outside your neighborhood, with an amazing pastor, and he mentioned Bob, amazing staff, amazing, it's a really good church. He said, so if you're ever interested, I would certainly love to welcome you there, and please, take me up on that offer. And that never left me. Just the kindness. He was so kind, and again, I can't say it enough. He was very genuine and very humble.
Okay.
You know him much better than I do, Bob.
And then that was it for your interaction with Jeff.
That was it. That was 2006.
Okay. But now, Bob, you knew Jeff very well. What was his last name?
Frolander.
Okay.
Jeff Frolander.
Okay. Yeah.
So you knew the family.
Yes. For some reason, I had B written down as like his last initial. But yes, I totally remember Jeff. So tell me a little about his involvement in your life and in the church.
Jeff first came to the church, I believe, 92 or 93. Him and his family, his brother-in-law, his wife's brother came, and his wife's dad came. So at that point in time, it was a huge influx into our church. And the
Yeah.
thing I noticed about them is they were very willing immediately. Who's doing the bulletin? Well, I can do that, Angel. Angel was his wife said. And they were just very involved in the church and do anything. And then as we began moving toward a building, and once we got a facility, Jeff was just really involved in anything we needed done on the grounds or facility. And then when we started decorating for Christmas, he was always alongside me, doing whatever I needed done during the Christmas season, but also during the whole off season, helping get in all the electrical lines and everything else. Just an immense involvement on his
Wow.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they were super involved in the church all that time.
So, but then he got cancer and passed away from cancer. And so you knew Jeff, you'd been, doing ministry with him for a while now. So, I mean, I can only imagine just all that comes with dealing with that kind of loss. And then also in the wake of that, kind of on top of that, there was this other problem that you now faced after Jeff's passing. And that was what?
Yeah, who's going to help me, God?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember praying that very distinctly. Lord, who's going to help me? Because Jeff's involvement had been so huge, I just couldn't imagine going on and doing the things I was doing, because at that time the ministry was demanding more and more time, and I couldn't imagine doing it. I should tell you, too, I think now is appropriate, is right after, Jeff Frolander and I used to meet every week at Bagel Notch for coffee.
Oh, okay.
And one morning he came shortly after the meeting with this Jeff.
Oh.
And he told me, he said, I met a guy at Home Depot, and I talked to him and helped him with his drip system, and I invited him to church. He says, just the greatest guy. He says, you got to watch for him because he's just a great guy. And so Jeff had given me an accounting of this meeting he had and was pretty excited about it because he liked this Jeff. And so that was just fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jeff contracted pancreatic cancer, and it was a tough one. And we met as long as we could, as long as his health would allow it, and I did his funeral service and the whole thing. But I was left in the wake of that with God. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to do? The loss was just huge.
Yeah.
For me on a friendship level and on a camaraderie level, but also on just work.
Yeah.
Volume of work.
And, regarding that work, just to give listeners a little bit of context, if you're not as familiar with the lights ministry at the church, in one sense we can say, lights are just lights. Jesus didn't tell us to string up lights or even to celebrate his birthday. But at Red Mountain, these lights are not just lights. They're very purposeful in their design, in the symbolism that's intended. I mean, I remember years ago when we first, recorded the narration for it, just seeing your writing about the thought that went into all these and what these different sculptures and scenes mean. And then on top of that, they're just they're unique sculptures, and so they're kind of a unique attraction during the Christmas season that brings a lot of people onto the campus who we will then hear years later have become regular attenders at the church, and they'll say that the first time they even heard of our church or came to our campus was because of those lights. And so there's a lot of fruitfulness, a lot of purpose in that ministry. And so to be in a position where suddenly, you're wondering how is this going to happen, was a really big deal. There was a lot of, weight to it. It wasn't just a matter of, Christmas won't look as nice this year,
That's right.
So what did you do then as you were kind of looking at this really significant need?
Well, of course, you have your eyes open, but there's not much you can do because, first of all, lights done poorly, nothing's worse than lights done poorly. So you have to have somebody that's meticulous. So that's one problem. And the other is you have to have somebody that actually likes to put Christmas lights up.
Yeah.
And there's very few men or women that like to do that. So really, the answer to your question simply is I didn't do much. I was languishing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I mean, this was something that I assume that you were just praying about and puzzling through, and was it looking pretty like I see no solution to this kind of thing. You know,
It was
I mean,
pretty much that.
Yeah.
And Jeff Frolander died in 2011, and so I didn't know what I was going to do. And Christmas season began to roll around.
Yeah.
And it was time to put up lights, so I started putting up lights. And
what time of was this? Like October, maybe?
October
or?
it would have been. Yeah, putting
Okay.
up lights, and I announced in church, "Hey, we need help with lights," and we made that announcement like we often do.
Mm-hmm.
And so one Saturday, I think it was a Saturday, I was out there working on lights, and a couple other volunteers there, and I noticed this guy I didn't know out working on lights, stringing up lights in the entryway, and I noticed he had a Florida State Seminoles hat on. And he was doing a tree. We talked quite a bit, and I thought, this guy seems like he's going to be a good worker. And so he, after a while, he asked me, how does it look, this tree? Now, Florida State, I knew that they had lost a chance at a national championship 3 years ago by missing a kick.
Oh.
And it was always wide right.
Always wide right.
Wide right. So Jeff said, "How does this tree look?" And I go, "Looks a little wide right."
I should have left then.
So I could see from his reaction, he just said, "Nice." And I could see that, okay, he gets sarcasm and humor. We're going to do fine.
Yeah. So I want to come back to you, Jeff. Sure. As I understand, around this time you were giving Red Mountain a try, and you had heard maybe through one of those announcements that Bob needed help with the lights. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. But to take a step back, when I met with Jeff Frolander, it was in 2006.
Okay.
And then my wife and I, Karen, we had Chase in 2008.
Okay.
We hadn't gone to church
In that time.
In that
Okay.
time.
Gotcha.
And I remembered what my dad had said. You know, that he really wishes that he would have, if he could have a do-over, he'd really like us to know and follow the Lord. And I will be the first to admit I'm naive to the amazing services, children's care and services that's at the church. So my wife and I discussed, hey, when Chase is old enough to attend and sit through a movie, he can go to church.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this was
that's great.
This was 2011, and I think we went and saw Cars 2, and it was a Saturday before Easter.
Oh, okay.
Sunday morning, we were at church.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, we attended each and every week.
Okay.
And then Bob made that announcement in October. So,
Gotcha.
So,
He started out sitting in the back.
I did. I sat in the back. Slowly moved up front. But I just remember Jeff 5 years ago. 5 years, earlier.
Yeah.
I remember this gentleman who approached me in a Home Depot, came to my house and just had a great conversation throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I remembered. And so when Karen and I sat down and said, well, what church are we going to attend? We have a neighbor across the street who's Methodist, and there's a Red Mountain Methodist Church there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had said, there was a gentleman by the name of Jeff. I told you about him 5 years ago. She goes, yeah. I said, I would like to go to Red Mountain. And we showed up that Easter morning.
Okay.
And then Bob made that announcement in October. And I showed up, and of course I wide righted the tree there. And then I don't have that much of a flexible schedule, but I was able to work some Fridays, take Fridays off. A lot of times on the Fridays it's just Bob and I.
Okay.
And we're doing the work that's not pretty.
Yeah.
Digging the trenches, burying the cords.
Oh, man,
we call it the Aleve days, the Advil days.
Oh.
Because you're taking a couple of Aleves, Advils afterwards.
Yeah.
But he and I would always have lunch, and I talked to Bob, and I was telling him the story about Jeff. I said, this is the gentleman. I don't remember his last name, but I described him, everything about. I know who you're talking about. And I said, well, I would love to meet him. And that's when I found out that he had passed away.
Oh.
But this time I'm freaking out because I'm realizing what the Lord's doing. And he sent me a Jeff.
Yeah.
Just another Jeff.
Wow.
And I'm realizing that how many years it took for all that to unfold. And it was such a blessing in the deepest way, just to know God was orchestrating all that.
Yeah.
A long time before Jeff knew he was sick.
Yeah. Wow. So now, how many years, Jeff, have you been helping with the lights?
Since 2011.
Okay. And why do you come back and do it again every year?
We always ask that.
Yeah, we do. Again, October's painful. October's pain, but then you start seeing the fruits. And then when I'm out here as much as I can. I travel for work, so I probably travel about 30 weeks a year.
Okay.
Not full weeks, but then when we flip the switch, just to see everybody. I remember, Bob, that one time when it was special to me because, one of the things I do in my somewhat spare time and also for work is I'm involved in disabled power soccer.
Oh.
They're in wheelchairs and they play soccer. And remember when that bus came by with all the disabled? That was a special moment.
Oh wow.
That makes all the pain goes away. And to listen to the stories that Bob has told me throughout the years of what you had mentioned, all the people that have come to church because of the lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you not do lights?
Yeah. That's really something. What does you guys have mentioned digging trenches and stuff. Tell me a little bit, Jeff, about like the preparation that is involved with it, like phases, either a zoomed out view or a zoomed in view, whatever you want to share about the preparation to make all this happen.
Well, how many trees do we have on campus, Bob? Minus the 6 we lost this year.
You lost trees, like you misplaced them?
Yeah. We didn't put them away and somebody grabbed them.
Did they just go bad? We had to cut them down or something? I didn't even notice that
The wind.
The wind.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
No, that's okay. How many trees do we have on campus?
I think it's 150 on the total campus. We don't do the east lot, so it's minus 30. It's a lot. It's a lot of trees.
So let's say there's about 100 trees. Well,
Okay.
these trees, every one of them have lights. Every one of them have clusters or icicles, so they need to be powered.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So we're running extension cords, and we want to hide the extension cords. We're running extension cords from the power source all the way up the tree. I became a rancher. I did not realize that, Bob's history was he was a rancher, and we use a lot of the fencing wire. I am a rancher now. I can fence with the best of them, because we're, the extension cords go all the way up the tree, so we can do the clusters, and so we're getting in the ladders and the lifts. And I got to tell you this one story, Bob did, you know what I'm going to tell, don't you? Bob didn't realize that I'm afraid of heights.
Oh.
Or I was. And we rent once a season, we rent one of the larger lifts.
60 foot.
60-foot lifts, because
boy.
it's for two reasons. We get the cross and then the eucalyptus tree that's out there for Virginia.
Okay.
That eucalyptus tree's tall. And he says, well, Jeff, let's go up there. And, I'm like, okay, sure. I'm not going to tell him no. Thought it'd be a cruel joke if I die on church campus doing lights. And so we're up there, and I'm kneeling down. There's a cage, and he goes, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And so we hang the clusters.
Blowing.
Oh, the wind's
So it's
blowing.
moving.
The wind's blowing.
Oh, no.
And we're up there, and we completed the task. And we're coming down, and as we're coming down, I'm mumbling, I'm going. Okay.
He's praying.
Well, there's these benchmarks of broken back, broken knee, as we're coming down, and then when we got to, okay, I could survive this one. I'm good. And Bob said, what are you doing? I said, there's benchmarks. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
There's benchmarks, and right now we're just in sprained ankle mode, so I'm okay.
Oh, man.
I felt horrible when I realized that. It's a pretty common thing. Guys don't like heights.
Oh, yeah.
And now I ask that all the time.
You
Are
didn't feel
good?
that horrible. I was in a
No.
lift. I was in a lift Friday night. I've gotten over it for the most part.
So, Bob, what kinds of, aside from that horror story, what kinds of work needs to be done each year that maybe the average person wouldn't suspect or realize needs to be done to make all it happen?
Yeah, there's always a list of things that you carry from the previous season that involves the light fixtures themselves, where you have to make so many of this color or whatever. But then there's also the thing of that tree grew bigger. We need more lights on it. We need to tunnel under the sidewalk and take power to it. Wow. So Jeff's helped me with all that. We've done all kinds of things. We try to get that work all done by like May, so we're not out there in the heat.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
I thought October. No, not October for this stuff.
Well, October's when the lights start, but we're doing a lot of the off season, running power.
Wow, I thought that was the off season in October. You guys, I didn't know you're doing stuff out there in the summer.
That's the start. October.
Usually we're done by summer, but
Yeah.
there's always something usually
Yeah.
that we're doing in the
Wow.
January, February, March, April. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's a monster.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I'm
But
beginning to
again,
appreciate.
Again, from an image point of view, it's non-threatening. People will come on the campus.
Yeah.
Good point.
And if you give them, people are so busy and they're so harried and so rushed. If you can give them a point of serenity or just sanity, something that slows them down and they think about now what really matters here. Why that's just a great gift a church can give to a community. Yeah. So
yeah. If somebody who's listening to this and is kind of thinking, well, this is a really great ministry, I'd like to help, keep it going. And what should they do, Bob, to get involved?
I would say just start volunteering, and I would say it's best to give what time you can, not go over your head and say, I'm going to be down there every time they're working on lights, but to give what time you can, just see if this is something that ministers to you as you do it and as you experience the moment. We always need volunteers just to do work for a day, but I mean, that's really one of the things we need is people that kind of have a heart for the vision of it and realize that it is a gift to the community.
Yeah.
And it says something really good about Christ and the church. Whenever you say something good about the church, you say something good about the Lord. Mm-hmm. That's the way PR works. So that's what I would say. And there's if they don't have time to come out and work, they can always buy lights and bring them to us.
Yeah. You're probably going through them every year. They're burning out and stuff. Yeah.
And since the push for LEDs, we have to convert. We're converting everything over, and we always need green string in the colors of red lights, green lights, and warm white.
Warm white.
Warm white, not cool white.
Not cool
white is not cool.
Not cool.
And that's all they got to remember. So warm white, green, and red on green strings. That's important because the color of the bush is green.
Okay.
And you don't want a white string.
Sure. Yep. That makes sense. Well, great ministry, and what a cool story to hear from you guys. So, Jeff and Bob, thank you so much for taking time to share this.
Absolutely.
You bet.
I'm trying to think of something to say other than that was a really interesting story, because I say that every time. Or that was a great conversation. That's okay. So this time I could say that's what I'm saying, Bob. That was a very interesting story. But I do, as a little aside here, and I wish that Arian was here. I thought Arian was going to be here, but Arian Rossi is basically a producer for this podcast, and so I was going to confront her and say, okay, Arian, is this episode or is it not a stealth recruitment tool for getting people to help out with the lights? We're issuing propaganda here on the Livingstone's podcast. Good timing, too. Yeah. I hope you're recording right now. Are you recording us? Okay, good. All right. You're good. You're talking more freely than usual. I was like, okay, all right, good. All right, so Bob, you were like a major part of this story, which is unusual for a co-host, on Livingstone's. So this story really well, but I'm curious if there was anything that stood out as memorable in our time talking with Jeff today.
Well, it's what was emphasized to me in his story is the multiple pieces God provided for a family to come to Red Mountain, but more importantly to him. The comments his dad made to him.
Yeah.
There aren't many fathers that would say that at that level.
Yeah.
And so that was a kind of a miraculous little thing. And then the whole story of Jeff Frolander's chance meeting at Home Depot with him. What are the odds? So there were a number of pieces that God does. And to me, that transcends all the propaganda about the light.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great ministry, but I mean, here we have something that's far bigger than that.
Oh, yeah.
The light God is bringing to people.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and the time, like, also the time over which things unfolded. You know,
Yeah.
that like you, and I think that's often, you know, the way we will kind of notice eventually at least a little slice of what God is doing is it takes a lot of time to look back and say, oh man, he was orchestrating this back these many years ago, and then that lined up with this and stuff like that. And of course, there's so many things that we'll never know this side of eternity, you know, that God is doing. But it's really encouraging when we do get a glimpse of something, you know, right now that God is doing. And so this is a really cool example of that. Right, we're about done. You've been a great co-host, very anything but rude. You've been very well-mannered and
Give me a few minutes.
well-mannered and poll segment at rmcchurch.org/podcast is where you can get the poll question every month. This month it was, what is your favorite part of food truck frenzy? Is it the food or the frenzy, meaning the activities? 59% voted food, 41% voted frenzy. One person commented both. Bob, do you have any thoughts on food or frenzy?
I think frenzy. I'd have to say frenzy.
Yeah. Why is that?
I don't need food.
You have like surpassed your need for food?
No.
That is amazing.
No, I'm far from that. I just take in too much. So yeah, I'd say the frenzy. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really like I don't know if it's built up over the years. I'm always surprised at how big it is and all the like the inflatables and the stuff
Yeah.
going on. I don't know that they add much every year, but it always seems like they have because
Yeah.
when you get there, it's just like, oh my gosh, you know.
And everybody together in
Yeah,
a
oh, yeah.
location. You know, a church, multiple services. Here you see everybody together and other people just visiting, and that's just a great frenzy in
Yeah.
my mind.
Yeah.
No names, you don't know names.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a great frenzy.
Yeah. Well, and you get a chance too to like connect with somebody that you
Yes.
know, but you know, for whatever reason, maybe you're going to different services, or one of you is attending a class that now that the other one isn't for you know, a number of weeks, and so you just get a chance to see some familiar faces and have a point of connection, maybe a good conversation. And kettle corn,
Yes, kettle corn is a big deal.
that's my big thing because Fry's grocery store stopped carrying the kettle corn that I like, which is like really bad for you. I think it has like all the MSGs or whatever you're not supposed to put in food. It's wonderful, but they don't have it anymore. And so now I wait every year for food truck frenzy so I can get my bag of kettle corn, which by the time this goes up, you have missed your chance at food and frenzy and kettle corn. And so you will just have to pine, longing for food truck frenzy to come around next year. But for now, that's it for this episode of Living Stones. You can follow Red Mountain Community Church at MyRedMTN on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also go online to rmcchurch.org/podcast to submit responses to our poll questions and leave questions for the guests featured on the next show. On our next episode, we'll be talking with Ann Lane. Ann is a missionary we support in Uganda, so she's going to share how God seems to be using her there to bring light and hope and healing to ministry leaders and pastors and students and young adults. So that'll be something cool to look forward to. You can go online to rmcchurch.org/podcast to submit your question for Ann, and you may just hear it read on the next episode. I always forget to prep the pastors for this, the new ones. Let's see if he knows what to do. In the meantime, I'm Peter Franson.
I'm Bob Fox.
Hey, good job, Bob. That was really good. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on Sunday.